Yo, what the hell is up? Welcome back to Reviews with Jake, where I just got done watching Encanto. Encanto is a new Disney animated film in which we have a Colombian family with all of the members who have been given magical powers, a gift. All except for one, a girl who cannot help but wonder why not her. Another week of scraping the barrel for films to review, but the good news is it's the last time in 2021. And honestly, I'm not really that mad because it gave me a chance to review yet another animated film this year. I don't dabble with them often, but when I do, generally speaking, I'm usually pleasantly surprised. This year, Raya and the Last Dragon was good. Mitchell's vs. the Machines was amazing. Earwig and the Witch? Not so much, but hey, 2 out of 3? That's not bad. Well, the pros for this movie start with the animation, a common thread on most of the animated films that I watched this year. The outlier of which being Earwig and the Witch, and I don't mean to kick it while it's down, but man, that did not look very good. It's hard to not knock films that look like that when you have the litmus test like this being released in the exact same year. I mean, this was breathtaking. On our way home from the theater, I talked with my girlfriend and we both talked about how Shrek looked so amazing when it was first released back in early 2000s, and now we look at it now and we're like, doesn't hold up as much. And while yes, this film looks superb today in late 2021, we all know that in 2031, we're gonna look at movies that blew us away a decade ago like this, and we're gonna be like, meh, today's better. It's like an absolute certainty, but seriously, I look at this film and I just can't fathom how it can get much better. This has to be the pinnacle, right? Animation cannot get more beautiful than this. Cheers to you, person checking in after 10 years to call me an idiot. Joke's on you, future man. I already knew that when I recorded this. The bottom line is this movie is a spectacle. If you take nothing else away from the story or the music or anything, you just cannot roll your eyes at the visuals. The lively, vibrant color just popped, blasted, frankly, right off the screen, leaving me with my jaw dropped, and all I could possibly say for like an hour and 45 minutes was ooh and ah. Stemming off of the color was the amazing cultural influence found in this film, as both the characters and the setting are both Colombian. Throughout my childhood, my family had a foreign exchange sister from Mexico, and as a result, my family has a strong connection and ties to Central America. And while no, Mexico and Colombia are not the same thing, they have very distinctive differences. I personally, while watching this film, could not help but recall some of the brightest moments I've had in my life from the times I spent going down to visit her and her family. The architecture, the clothing, the artwork, the family ideals, the energy, the festivities. Easily the most fun and coolest wedding I've ever been to in my entire life was my sister's wedding in San Pancho, Mexico. And frankly, it's not even close. The reception was on a beach, and we stayed at a place up the hill from the beach overlooking the party and the beach, and we walked back up the hill and called it a night at like, I don't know, midnight. We fell asleep to the sound of bass blasting off the hillside from the beach below, which was no problem at all. We had our fair share of cocktails, it was no problem. We woke up at like 7 or 8 a.m. to the exact same sound that we fell asleep to, bass blasting from the hillside below. They were partying all night and still getting after it. It was impressive, it was a blast, it was epic, and this is an epic case of me being sidetracked, but I'm just saying, I felt all of that, recalled all of that while watching this movie. It captured that spirit perfectly. The sense of community, family, grand, colorful celebrations. This film is just bursting with very beautiful culture. This film also possesses some very real, relatable messaging. As I mentioned before, family is a massive theme. And while yes, family is a very beautiful thing to explore, it's also very trialing, and the dilemma circulating around this film really dives deep into that. Family and generational expectations, traditions, things that can really heavily weigh and strain on a lot of people and families. I think that's a topic that a lot of people can relate to, really transport themselves into the shoes of the character in at least some capacity. Times change, ideals change, society changes from generation to generation, and to think and expect that things are not going to change over decades of decades of decades of decades is just unrealistic. And sometimes that diversion can cause some real turmoil. This film tackles all of that head on in a very digestible and charming package. Those are the types of kid films that I really appreciate, like Zootopia, the ones that tackle really adult themes, but they do so in a way that kids aren't registering those parallels like their parents are. This film is very high energy, it's beautiful, it has good humor, and all of that kind of disguises the lessons and morals that our youth will take away at the end of the runtime. time. By the time of the film completed, I walked out of the theater just feeling good. It's a very uplifting film. However, with that, I will say that some of the humor feels a little low-hanging fruit, a little pandery towards kids, which can be a little hit and miss for adults. Yes, I realize at the end of the day, this is a kids movie, and if kids enjoy it, that's all that matters, and I think most of them will. But for me, an adult without kids, I don't know, some of those low-hanging jokes just didn't always land for me, but hey, that's kids movies. That being said, I'm still gonna lob it in with the cons because there are some kids films that transcend that, buck that trend of just being for kids. Some of them are funny for adults and kids, like Mitchell's vs. the Machines. That was quite possibly the funniest movie I've seen all year, and it was a kids movie, so it's possible to appease both sides of the coin, and I feel like just sometimes this movie just leaned a little bit more to the youthful side. On sort of a similar note, and I really should have seen this coming, that's on me, this movie is a bit of a musical. This is by far probably the most musical-like film I've seen and reviewed so far this year, and generally speaking, it's not really my cup of tea. They're almost always very visually appealing and impressive, but me being a big story guy, I just can't seem to wrap my mind around just someone breaking out into song and dance in the middle of a conversation. It just does not compute with me. I did not know going in that this was going to be a musical. Had I known that going in, maybe I wouldn't have gone in at all, because it's not really my prerogative. I mean, maybe I would have, because there isn't really much else to see this week, but I digress. On the note of me being a story guy, my final con is kind of a story con, and that is the overwhelming array of characters featured in this film. If you aren't new here, you probably have heard me complain before that I don't like ensemble films. Having too many characters usually hinders the overall story and characterization, and while this film is not an ensemble film, it's mostly centered around the one girl who doesn't have any gifts or powers. I think her connection with her family members that do is a strong component of this film. The trouble was there were seemingly 1,000 of these other family members to try and keep track of, and it felt like it wasn't until like halfway through the film that I felt like I really had it down. The entire first song of the film is basically a huge exposition dump, a crash course for us, the audience of this family. Who is whose parent or son or daughter? Who's married to who has powers, who does not? And while you're trying to lock down and register all of that information, process it, you're also trying to get down the relationships. Who gets along with who butts heads with who? It's just a lot to process and keep track of, and as a result, that fantastic messaging that I mentioned before, while awesome in theory, doesn't really get driven home as hard as it could have. That being said, all in all, for it being a kids movie and a musical, I thought it was pretty good. The animation alone is worth the price of admission. I wouldn't say it's like the top tier of kids movies, that upper echelon, but it's very watchable, digestible, and enjoyable. If you have kids that you're trying to get out of the house this holiday season, go to the theater. They'll enjoy themselves. And you will probably be like me, just sit there in awe at how far we've come since Steamboat Willie. I'm going to give Encanto a B. But that is just me. What do you guys think? Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe to this channel to stay up to date. New videos coming real soon. Stay safe. Thanks for checking in.